faithfully conveying value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Club. Today we'll explore the book Alexander the Great, The Life and Death of a Conqueror. What do you know about Alexander the Great, and how do you view his imperial achievements? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section. Ancient Europe had four great military commanders: Alexander, Hannibal, Caesar, and Napoleon. Alexander, the earliest born, remains the most legendary. He became king of Macedon at 20, and within a decade conquered thousands of kilometers, building an empire from southern Europe to northwest India. This was nearly the entire world known to Europeans at the time. Thus, Alexander became known as the world conqueror. Then this comet-like conqueror died unexpectedly at 33. His Macedonian empire crumbled, leaving endless wonder and speculation for posterity. Alexander's image in European minds has evolved through history. Pre-20th century historians portrayed him as a civilizing force, believing his campaigns spread Greek culture globally, advancing society. In the 20th century, as colonialism faced criticism, assessments of Alexander declined. Post-World War II, he was likened to Hitler as an ambitious warmonger. But British historian Anthony Everett argues neither extreme praise nor condemnation is fair. We should understand Alexander within the context of his era. Thus, through rigorous historical analysis and objectivity, he authored Alexander the Great, revealing the conqueror's life and enduring mysteries. I'll present this book in three parts. Part 1. Standing on his father's shoulders. Alexander's rise to power. Part 2. The world-conquering campaign. History's greatest expedition. Part 3. Early death. The Macedonian Empire's fragmentation. All right, let's begin part 1. Standing on his father's shoulders. Alexander's rise. Alexander was king of Macedon. So first let's examine ancient Macedon's foundations. Macedon lay north of Mount Olympus on the Greek peninsula, its heart an alluvial plain bordering the Aegean Sea to the south. Moreover, surrounded by high mountains and dense forests on three sides, its relatively isolated geographical location determined Macedonia's marginal position in the ancient Greek world. On one hand, Macedonians spoke Greek, making them part of the Greek world. On the other hand, compared to advanced city-states like Athens and Sparta, Macedonian culture was backward, customs barbaric, and they were long despised. In the eyes of Athenians, Macedonians were outright foreigners, and Macedonians themselves saw themselves as outsiders. For example, in 480 BCE, the Persian Empire invaded ancient Greece. Initially, Macedonia sided with Persia, and only after the Greek alliance achieved a major victory did they switch sides, which naturally drew criticism from other city-states. They almost stripped Macedonia of its eligibility to participate in the Olympic Games. In short, for a long time, Macedonia had a poor reputation in the Greek world. Macedonia's internal affairs were also very chaotic. While Macedonia was a monarchy, the king's power base was very unstable, with assassinations and coups being commonplace, leading to national weakness. To the northwest, it also faced threats from the Illyrians. In 359 BCE, the Illyrians launched a massive invasion, capturing the Macedonian capital Pella, with the king and thousands of soldiers killed, leaving Macedonia in peril. At this point, a royal member named Philip II stepped forward, quickly reorganizing the army and defeating the Illyrians. Simultaneously, using skilled diplomacy, he gained support from other Greek city-states to consolidate his throne. Philip II's 23-year reign was the critical period when Macedonia emerged from its low point and moved towards prosperity. And Alexander was born 3 years after Philip II's ascension, specifically on July 20th, 3650 BCE. One can imagine that throughout his youth, he saw Macedonia thriving and flourishing. He grew up in such an atmosphere and later inherited a substantial legacy. So we say that Alexander stood on his father's shoulders and achieved great imperial feats. So what specific legacies did Philip II leave behind? Mainly three: a powerful army, a strong state, and a broad vision.
First, a powerful army. After ascending to the throne, Philip II greatly expanded the military, increasing infantry from 10,000 to 24,000.
Cavalry expanded from 600 to 3,000, bringing the total Macedonian army to 27,000, which was a massive armed force in the ancient Greek world. During the peak of powerful city-states like Athens, they could muster at most over 10,000 soldiers. Philip II pursued not just quantity, but also quality. He gathered noble youths to form the companion cavalry, well-equipped, rigorously trained, and fiercely loyal, serving as the king's key tool for internal control and external expansion. Innovative, tactical, Philip II drew from the ancient Greek phalanx and combined it with highly mobile cavalry to develop the Macedonian phalanx. After reforms, the Macedonian army's combat strength surged, allowing Philip II to bring northern Greece, Upper Macedonia, Bulgaria, and other regions under his sphere of influence. He also tried to control Greek city-states like Athens and Sparta. In 338 BCE, in August, Philip II dealt a crushing blow to the Greek alliance at the Battle of Chaeronea, then established the Corinthian League dominated by Macedonia, marking its rise as the hegemon of the ancient Greek world. Alexander, just 18, fought at Chaeronea. It was he who led a fierce cavalry charge, breaking the enemy lines and securing the victory. He became renowned worldwide for his bravery and combat skills. Of course, Alexander wasn't just a warrior. His knowledge and vision were exceptional among his peers. When Alexander was young, Philip II invited Aristotle to tutor him. Alexander studied under this most renowned ancient Greek thinker, learning politics, geography, philosophy, literature, and science, greatly broadening his horizons. Among these, the Homeric epics influenced him most profoundly. This epic poem by Homer chronicles an ancient war, the Greek expedition against Troy. Homer vividly dramatized the war atmosphere, portraying Greek commanders like Agamemnon and Achilles as near-divine heroes. Alexander was captivated, yearning to achieve greatness like Achilles, and his entourage flattered him by calling him the modern Achilles. This fueled his later relentless campaigns. Essentially, he saw himself as Achilles reborn, with a life goal of conquest, and more conquest, all the way to the world's end. In 336 BCE, Philip II was assassinated by a disgruntled subordinate. Due to the sudden death, rumors persisted that Alexander was the mastermind behind it. Evidence suggests Philip II once suspected Alexander wasn't his biological son, causing their relationship to become strained. With his position as heir apparent in jeopardy, Alexander took a desperate gamble by assassinating his father. However, the author of this book believes such claims are unfounded and shouldn't be lightly believed by later generations. Oh, yes. What we can confirm is that in 36 BCE, the 20-year-old Alexander ascended the throne, and the expedition he was about to launch would become one of the longest, largest, and most influential in the ancient world. This forms the main content of the second part, the Grand Expedition. Let's discuss Alexander's path to conquering the world.
Looking at Alexander's military campaigns throughout his life, they can be divided into 3 stages.
First stage, securing the home front and the initial campaign against Persia. After Philip II's death, Greek city-states like Athens and Sparta attempted to break free from Macedonian control. Though advisors urged restraint, since the new king's position was unstable, Alexander believed compromise would only embolden opponents and cost Macedonia its dominant status. He struck decisively before the Greek city-states were fully prepared, creating an overwhelming military presence. Reluctantly, the Greek city-states once again acknowledged Macedonia's hegemony. To be fair, Macedonia as the hegemon wasn't overly oppressive. City-states maintained political, economic, and cultural independence, only following Macedonian foreign policy. But Alexander made his stance clear. Cause trouble, and I'll show no mercy. He meant what he said. In 335 BCE, when Thebes in central Greece rebelled, Alexander suppressed it and ordered all adult males executed. Women and children were sold into slavery, and the ancient city of Thebes was destroyed. Through this, Alexander demonstrated his unchallengeable supremacy and consolidated his rear. Alexander then turned his gaze eastward to the Persian Empire. Why Persia? Because for centuries, Greece and Persia had been sworn enemies in constant conflict, creating a belief in the Greek world that whoever defeated Persia would be the undisputed leader. Philip II had begun preparations for the Persian expedition during his reign, but Alexander saw conquering Persia as the starting point for world domination. However, the Persian Empire covered vast territories, including modern Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan, 50 times larger than Macedonia, making complete conquest difficult in the short term. Alexander decided to test the waters first, to gauge his opponent's strength. So he led his army across the Dardanelles and launched an attack on Asia Minor. Asia Minor, the Asian part of modern-day Turkey, lay at the intersection of the Persian Empire and the ancient Greek world, garrisoned with 15,000 Persian cavalry plus 5,000 Greek mercenaries. It should be noted that ancient Greeks lacked a unified concept of nation-states. It was common for people from one city-state to be hired by another, even fighting for opposing sides as mercenaries. In fact, the defense of Asia Minor was led by the Greek mercenary commander Memnon, who was about to face Alexander's army of 50,000. In May 334 BCE, the two sides faced off across the Granicus River in northwestern Asia Minor. Memnon judged that the Macedonians wouldn't dare attack easily, so he relaxed his defenses. But Alexander took advantage of the night to lead his elite companion cavalry across the river in a surprise attack. The unprepared Persian army collapsed, and Memnon barely escaped. The Battle of Granicus was Macedonia's first victory over Persia, filling Alexander with confidence for ultimate triumph.
But Memnon was no pushover.
Afterwards, he adopted a city-holding strategy to stall Alexander's advance, used naval forces to threaten Macedonian supply lines, and even incited Greek city-states to rebel against Alexander. The author believes that had Memnon's plan succeeded, it would have caused major trouble and possibly turned the tide. Sadly, fate had other plans. Memnon died unexpectedly of illness, leaving the Persian army leaderless and demoralized. Across Asia Minor, resistance crumbled as cities surrendered one after another. Thus, Alexander conquered the region. In spring 333 BCE, Alexander visited Gordium in northern Asia Minor. In a local temple stood a chariot whose yoke and body were tightly bound by cornel bark into an intricate knot known as the Gordian knot.
For centuries, no one had untied it. What did Alexander do?
He drew his sword and cut through it. Through this act, he demonstrated himself as a resolute and powerful ruler. With this, the first phase of the expedition ended. Phase 2, conquering the Fertile Crescent and toppling the Persian Empire. After securing Asia Minor, Alexander faced two options: push east into Persia's heartland or head south to conquer the Fertile Crescent. Alexander chose the latter. In autumn 333 BCE, he marched south with his army. The so-called Fertile Crescent refers to a narrow strip of land along the eastern Mediterranean coast. It stretches from modern-day Syria through Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, all the way to northern Egypt. Named for its crescent shape, Alexander planned to conquer this region to secure his rear. While aiming to destroy Persia completely, for Persia, the Fertile Crescent was the empire's breadbasket and financial hub, absolutely vital to hold. To show resolve, Persian Emperor Darius III personally took command, determined to confront Alexander. In autumn 333 BCE, The two armies met near Issus, with Persian forces exceeding 100,000 men. The Macedonians had only 30,000, and Issus's open terrain favored large troop deployments, so Darius III was brimming with confidence.
Initially, Persian heavy cavalry battered Macedonian troops. At a critical moment on the left flank, Alexander led his companions in a desperate charge straight toward Darius' position.
The charge shattered Persian formations. Darius III fled in panic, abandoning even his family who were captured.
The Persian army collapsed. Defeated at Issus, they could no longer defend the Fertile Crescent. Alexander advanced south unopposed, capturing key cities like Damascus, Tyre, and Gaza, pushing toward Egypt. In winter 332 BCE, Alexander crossed the Suez Isthmus and stormed Memphis, Egypt's ancient political and religious center. Seeing all was lost, Persia's Egyptian governor surrendered. Alexander accepted the title of pharaoh in Memphis, marking his replacement of the Persian emperor. As Egypt's supreme ruler, he founded Alexandria in northern Egypt, still Egypt's largest port today. Conquering the Fertile Crescent brought Alexander vast wealth and ample troops. Now he was ready to strike Persia's death blow. In July 331 BCE, Alexander marched toward Persia's heartland in Mesopotamia, while Darius III mobilized for final battle. That October, armies clashed at Gaugamela, north of modern Baghdad, the battle unfolding much like Issus.
Initially, Persian numerical superiority prevailed. Their cavalry even flanked the Macedonians, threatening encirclement.
But Alexander quickly pinpointed Darius III's location and charged with his companions. Watching his guards fall one by one before him, Darius III turned and fled, causing the Persian army to collapse. In this battle, Macedonia lost only 1,200 men, while Persia suffered tens of thousands of casualties. Worse for Darius III, after the Battle of Gaugamela, his reputation hit rock bottom. The empire began crumbling from within. Cities like Babylon, modern Baghdad, and the Persian capital Susa surrendered without resistance.
Persian nobles led by Bessus believed Darius III was unfit and staged a coup, assassinating him.
Bessus and his followers fled to Central Asia to resist, but were soon eliminated by Alexander. The first empire in human history spanning Europe, Asia, and Africa. After over 2 centuries, the Persian Empire fell, replaced by the Macedonian Empire. Alexander's expedition entered its third phase, advancing into India. South of Central Asia lies the Indian subcontinent. This marked the edge of ancient Greek geographical knowledge. Crossing India supposedly led to an endless ocean, the world's end. Alexander, as world conqueror, naturally yearned to explore it. So after securing Central Asia, he led his army onward. In summer 327 BCE, Macedonian forces crossed the Khyber Pass, vital link between Central South Asia, entering northwest India. Ancient India was fragmented, dotted with tribes and principalities unable to unite. Facing the formidable Macedonian army, most chose submission. The few resisting tribes were easily crushed. Alexander swiftly occupied the Indus River Valley, an area covering modern Pakistan and India's Punjab region. But India was too vast, and Macedonian supply lines were stretched thin. Forced to face reality, Alexander abandoned his dream of reaching the world's end and led his army back. Thus his grand expedition concluded. To summarize, setting out in 334 BCE and returning to Greece in 324 BCE, the expedition lasted 10 years. Alexander conquered the Fertile Crescent, toppled Persia, penetrated Central Asia, seized the Indus Valley, establishing a 5,000-kilometer wide empire, over 5 million square kilometers. Its capital, Babylon, became the Greek world's political, cultural hub. At this point, Alexander was only 32, still with potential for greater achievements. No one expected Alexander to die young, leading to the collapse of the Macedonian Empire. This is the core of Part 3. After returning from India, Alexander remained in Babylon, hosting banquets to reward his troops. Simultaneously, he planned to establish an international trade route between Egypt and India, requiring conquest of the Arabian Peninsula to control the Gulf of Aden and Persian Gulf. Alexander also intended to advance west of Egypt, conquer North Africa, then cross the Strait of Gibraltar into the Iberian Peninsula. Thus, the Mediterranean would become Macedonia's inland sea. Alexander even envisioned conquering the entire Indian subcontinent, a grand strategy requiring full imperial mobilization. And so Alexander ordered all regions to share military expenses and provide soldiers. Craftsmen gathered near Babylon, forging weapons and warships day and night. The new expedition was imminent. On the evening of May 29th, 323 BCE, Alexander hosted a banquet to boost morale. He drank heavily, developed a fever, and vomiting the next day, worsening over days. Realizing his end was near, Alexander ordered a wall broken so soldiers could gather for final farewells. Why did the physically robust Alexander succumb so completely? For millennia, debates raged, some attributing it to illness, others to poisoning and conspiracy. The author believes it resulted from multiple factors. Symptoms suggest he suffered from malignant malaria. In ancient times, with primitive medicine, this disease alone was often fatal. Years of campaigning left him wounded. An arrow once pierced his lung, weakening his body and resistance to malaria. Worse, Alexander's alcoholism exacerbated his condition. By June 11th, the legendary Conqueror succumbed to death at 33. You might wonder, had Alexander lived, could his ambitions have succeeded? It's uncertain. By the expedition's later stages, it had become Alexander's personal war. His battle-hardened troops were utterly exhausted. They yearned only to disband and return home. Before entering India, noble youths plotted to kill Alexander, with senior generals involved. After the plot was exposed, all involved were executed. They still fought in India, but morale was low. Even the loyal companions complained. Now they could finally return home to peace, yet faced another campaign. Naturally, Macedonians resisted. As for Greek city-states funding the wars, and newly conquered regions like the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia, they had even less motivation. The new expedition was Alexander's personal drive. Imperial consensus was absent, making sustained glory unlikely. Thus, when news of Alexander's death spread, relief outweighed grief. His generals immediately scrapped war plans to win popular support. Ultimately, world's end was Alexander's obsession, unappealing to masses weary of dying in battle. All right, that concludes Alexander's expedition. Finally, we'll cover the empire's dissolution and Alexander's legacy. First, the empire's collapse. After Alexander's death, his queen bore a son proclaimed king, but he was a puppet. Real power lay with generals and satraps who carved up the empire.
Egypt's satrap, Ptolemy, founded the Ptolemaic dynasty. General Seleucus created the Seleucid Empire, spanning Asia Minor and Mesopotamia.
In the Far East, generals established the Bactrian kingdom across modern Afghanistan and Pakistan. His vast empire vanished within years. Thus, Alexander's true legacy wasn't territorial but intangible: military genius and cultural diffusion. First, military prowess. As Europe's first tactical genius, Alexander's strategies were revolutionary for antiquity. For instance, he never fought unprepared battles. He deployed scout cavalry to gather intel on terrain, customs, and enemy movements for analysis before deciding army maneuvers. In combat, he pinpointed enemy weaknesses and led decisive charges. For example, in both confrontations with Persian Emperor Darius III, Persian forces initially held advantage. Yet Alexander always pinpointed Darius III's position, concentrated forces to decapitate command structures, causing Persian collapse. This battlefield instinct to seize fleeting opportunities was extraordinary. One might say Alexander possessed innate genius in this regard. Moreover, Alexander prioritized logistics with immense dedication. Thus, marching thousands of kilometers, Macedonian troops rarely faced supply shortages. Later European military leaders, like Julius Caesar and Napoleon, emulated these strategies, carrying Alexander's legacy. Now, cultural influence. Military glory fades, cultural impact endures. Wherever Macedonian armies went, they spread Greek culture, art, religion, and governance, blending with local traditions to create Hellenization. As mentioned, Ptolemaic, Seleucid, and Bactrian kingdoms were quintessential Hellenistic states. Even today, Hellenistic achievements remain visible. For instance, Gandhara, modern Afghanistan-Pakistan border, was part of Bactria, later the Kushan Empire. Artisans there fused Greek sculpting techniques with Buddhist iconography, creating Gandharan Buddha statues. These Buddhas featured high-bridged noses, less rounded foreheads, and wavy hair, distinctly Greek traits, celebrated as cultural fusion masterpieces. The Hellenistic era lasted 300 years until Rome conquered these states. Yet Roman civilization itself built upon Greek foundations. Thus, Alexander's legacy was inherited by Rome. After this episode, what are your thoughts on Alexander? How do you view his military feats? Feel free to share in the comments. All right, that concludes Alexander the Great, The Life and Death of a Conqueror. We've interpreted this book. Keynotes are below the audio. See you next time.